Primordial Desolation. I am the Dragon Ancestor. I choose for the dragon race to retreat from the very beginning. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 529. When they reached the top of the mountain, they found that the top of the mountain was completely different from the bottom of the mountain. When they looked at it from the bottom of the mountain, they felt that the top of the mountain was very small and must be colder than the bottom. But when they finally reached the top, they discovered that the landscapes above and below were completely different. Not only were the mountains and waters above beautiful, but the temperature was also very suitable. Let me just say, no matter how powerful Caillou is, it is impossible to build his ancient tomb on a snow mountain. Even if he dies, he will not be able to enjoy the great scenery. Actually, Yazan felt a little strange before coming here. Caillou was so lucky that he built his ancient tomb in such a place. Most people would choose a good location. Shen Long didn't say anything after hearing this, but the roommate leader next to him hearing this, he glared at him. Then Shen Long stepped forward and took a quick look. This place was bigger than he thought. If they had to search for it bit by bit, they might not be able to find it even if they find it in the year of the monkey, horse and moon. In this case, start from the center and look around. You should be able to find it quickly. Chief Caillou glanced at Shen Long's sad expression and knew what Shen Long was thinking. After he finished saying this, he took the initiative to go to the center of the mountain top and start looking. Shen Long also felt that it made sense, so he followed. He was looking for it together, and Yazan next to him naturally didn't want to be lazy, so he started to search with her. Originally, they thought it wouldn't be that difficult to find a tomb. After all, most people would set up a tombstone or something, but there was not even a little symbolism here. Nothing. I said when you built the ancient tomb, didn't you set up a monument? Even planting an unusual tree will do. At this time, Yazan began to complain. Isn't Caillou afraid that his descendants will not be able to find where he is when they come here? The leader of Caillou next to him said something embarrassed after hearing this. Originally we planted a tree here, but after thousands of years of evolution, this place is completely different from what it was back then. There are even hundreds of trees. Where do you want me to identify them? After saying these words, Chief Caillou sighed. If he had known this, he might as well have set up a tombstone here. After hearing this, Yazan originally wanted to continue to complain, but was glared at by Shen Long. In desperation, he could only bite his lip, and continue to search there. While searching, he was still complaining about Caillou. This group of people didn't know what they were thinking. They didn't have any idea at all. They were not smart enough. They said that Shen Long would bring him here. What is the purpose of looking for Caillou's ancient tomb? There are so many descendants of Caillou. Has no one been found? Have you never had sex with her in all these years? After Shen Long asked this question, he saw leader Caillou scratching his head in embarrassment, and explained to them that they also wanted to offer sacrifices, but this does not mean that they can be found if they can. I heard that there are some people wanted to come up to look for it, but after searching for more than a year, they couldn't find it. In the end, they had to go back in despair. From then on, no one asked to come up to worship their ancestors. Not to mention finding some clues. Most people of our generation have never heard of this, let alone that his tomb is on a mountain. I am relatively good, at least I have heard of it. Chapter 530. After hearing this, Yazan felt that he could no longer control his temper. Although he had changed, his true nature was unchangeable. I'm really impressed by you. After saying this, Yazan took a deep breath, not knowing what he should say. If he continued to speak, Shen Long and leader Caillou would definitely be unwilling. In this way, he kept holding in his breath. In your own body, it will not be able to feel comfortable for a long time now. I can only search slowly. From the beginning, I knew that this place is not easy to find. It is possible to find him in 10.5 days. Caillou leader agreed to Shen Long so happily from the beginning because he didn't know where Caillou's ancient tomb was. In this case, it would be better to cooperate with Shen Long, so that he could see where the ancient tomb was. "You can go back and tell its clansmen." Shen Long didn't say anything after hearing this. This time, he had to insist on completing the matter. After all, the fate of the entire dragon clan was in his hands. Yazen next to him did not have such a heavy burden. "I still don't know why Shen Long came here to look for Caillou's tomb, so I feel uncomfortable all the time. You can continue to search here. I don't want to look for it anymore." After Yazen said these words, he found a big stone nearby and lay down. When he turned over, he saw Shen Long and Caillou over there. The leader was still working hard and ignored him at all, as if he didn't listen. It was as he said. Yazen gritted his teeth and felt uncomfortable all over his body. He even looked down on the stone he was lying on. "Although that shitty place is warmer, it's not as good as the one below. I really don't know what those people are thinking in their minds." Yaezui muttered a lot here, but he was afraid that he would be too loud and be heard by the leader Caillou, so he could only whisper. He cursed here for a long time, but found that the leader Caillou didn't pay attention at all. He thought that what he said was not heard at all, so he cursed even more vigorously. "Don't go too far. Don't think that I didn't hear you. I just don't want to pay attention to you. You better get out of here, you little brat. Go back to where you came from. This is not your dragon palace." Finally, leader Caillou couldn't help it any longer and started to yell at Yazen. Seeing this, the male Shen Long hurriedly stopped him. The two of them finally shook their heads at Yazen. Of course, Yazen was not willing to let Shen Long down. He had been there before. After the change, Shen Long had just changed his opinion about himself, and he could not let Shen Long change his opinion again. Then he felt particularly angry and punched the stone where he was lying. But what he didn't expect was that the stone he hit slowly sank, and a piece of ground cracked not far in front of him. Seeing this, Yazen originally thought he was in trouble, which frightened him, until he felt the ground when something shook and something slowly rose up from below. Both Shen Long and the leader Caillou looked over. Yazen hurriedly retracted his fist, not daring to say anything. Originally, the leader Caillou wanted to continue to blame, but he didn't expect. Surprisingly, what appeared in front of them turned out to be a statue of Caillou. This huge statue was particularly conspicuous when standing on it. Chapter 531. Yazen took a closer look and realized that it was he who had caused trouble this time. He had obviously made a meritorious service, so he raised his chin and slapped his little tail in disgust. "Just now, some people thought that I was here to be a disservice and told me to go back. If I hadn't happened upon this agency here, you probably wouldn't have been able to find it for the rest of your life." Chief Caillou ignored these next words. He sincerely regarded Yuzui as a child, but he also felt grateful to Yuzui in his heart. If it hadn't been for Yuzui, they probably wouldn't have been able to find him. This should be the right place. Chief Caillou must have nodded. He has also seen the statue of Caillou. After hearing this, Shen Long took 2 steps forward and took a closer look at the statue. Then Shen Long slowly floated up, and he put the previous stove. He took it out again, and the old dragon inside the stove also felt the changes outside. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the huge statue outside, and couldn't help being surprised. "I didn't expect you to have this ability and find it so quickly." Even though they haven't seen each other for thousands of years, now they just see Caillou's statue, and Old Long feels that there are countless pressures surrounding him. "Hurry up and put this stove in the hands of the statue. I already feel the power calling me." After hearing this, Shen Long put the stove in the hands of the statue according to what Lao Long said. Finally, he saw that the color of the stove became brighter and brighter, and the statue also changed, and the statue slowly glowed. "And the light is getting more and more dazzling." What happened? A stone was exposed. It was really new. The AZ next to him was neither cold nor indifferent. After saying this, he hid behind a tree. The light was so dazzling that he couldn't look at it for a long time, otherwise he would be blind. At the same time, he felt the game again and was curious about it. What on earth did the dragon come here to put the stove in the hands of the statue? And why such a big change happened? Soon, it won't be long before our dragon clan will be able to see the light of day again and regain its former might. The spirit of the ancient dragon and the stove shook his body, only feeling that the power in his body was coming back continuously. He had not felt this feeling for thousands of years, and now he has begun to rely on it, for fear that it was a dream. And there was nothing when I woke up. The leader of Qilin next to him knelt down without saying a word when he saw this. He looked at the statue excitedly, but he did not expect that everything in the book was true. When Shen Long saw this, the reaction was just to step back a few steps without showing any particular surprise. In the end, he watched the two lights getting closer and closer, and finally merged into a ball of light. Then he saw Qilin's statue slowly shaking, and the light it became more and more obvious, and slowly turned into lavender, and finally turned into a lotus-shaped light. When I saw Yazan next to it, I couldn't help but open my eyes. What's happening here? Light can actually change into this form. Sure enough, the light turned out by Qilin's statue is different. After Yazan said these words, the leader of Qilin raised his chin happily, but he still knelt here sincerely, not daring to get up for a moment. But don't look at whose ancient tomb this is, and whose statue this is. Don't underestimate Qilin. Please put away your arrogance. Chapter 532. When Shen Long looked at the purple lotus, he always felt that there seemed to be an inexplicable pulling force that made him slowly get closer, and he did so. Then Shen Long slowly stretched out his hand to touch the lotus under Qilin's gaze. Stop it, you can't touch that thing. Chief Qilin was nervous. After saying this, he wanted to step forward and stop him, but it was too late. Shen Long had already touched the lotus. Chief Qilin couldn't say much. He could only take a deep breath and sit down. He came down and watched quietly what kind of reaction Shen Long would have. But Shen Long seemed to be stunned, standing there in a daze. He felt that his temples were swollen, and countless memories were pouring out. Entering in, a great wave of waves arose in his mind. What came in was the scene of the war that year, with war smoke everywhere, corpses all around, and no one intact. What was in front of him was the vivid scene of Qilin. If he hadn't observed carefully, he would have thought that he was really in this place. There are not enough soldiers this time, so let the dragons go. Anyway, dragons are much stronger than ordinary soldiers, and since they want it, their bodies can handle it. After Qilin said these heartfelt words, some people from the dragon clan were immediately dissatisfied, but they couldn't resist and were directly pressed onto the battlefield. The dragon clan people on the battlefield could only survive by fighting desperately. He looked at the people of the dragon clan fell one after another, and then some got up and continued fighting, while some could not get up anymore. In such a melee, the dragon clan gave up their precious fighting power. The combat effectiveness shown by our dragon clan this time has been fruitful. Qilin said that we have contributed a lot this time, and we will naturally have good days in the future for our dragon clan. One of the dragons who looked particularly powerful was still happy, but what he didn't expect was that the dragon clan would soon face a disaster. Those who filled out the form were so easy to accept that they still disappeared, treating them as monsters, so from the beginning and the end, they were allowed to live a good life. In addition, the fact that the dragon clan accidentally broke into the forbidden area was connected with other things, making those who filled in the form even more disgusted with the dragon clan. Those people proposed that the dragon clan accidentally break into the forbidden area. The entire clan was exterminated to offset their sins. At this time, Shen Long saw a familiar dragon. This dragon was the ancient dragon back then, but the ancient dragon back then was obviously much healthier than it is now. The people of Longs have committed so many sins and killed so many lives, not all for you. If we, the Longs people, sacrificed our lives to help you walk out of this bloody path, would you still be able to become immortals? After Gu Long said this, many gods looked at me and looked a little unhappy. They did climb up on the bodies of the dragons, but no one wanted to admit it. Gu Long originally wanted to argue, but in order for the dragons to be able to do so in the future to survive, I can only swallow my anger and say nothing. I know that the mistake made by the dragon clan this time is unforgivable, so let me bear it alone and seal me into the furnace. If the dragon clan does anything wrong in the future, I will perish together with the entire dragon clan. Now that they have it as a bargaining chip, the gods are much happier. After all, he is also the leader of the dragon clan, and many people look up to him. Chapter 533. By the time Shen Long came to his senses again, The leaders of Caillou and Yazan beside him were already waiting a little anxiously. "Fortunately, you woke up. If you hadn't woken up, we would probably have gone up to take pictures of you." Originally, Yazan was still a little worried, but seeing that Shen Long had come to his senses, he no longer worried. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. After hearing this, Shen Long nodded and said without saying anything else, he glanced at the statue. At this moment, Shen Long saw that the statue began to move slightly. At first, the movement of the statue was very small, so Shen Long was not sure whether what he saw was the truth. But soon Shen Long confirmed that what he just saw was true. He saw with his own eyes that the statue's fingers moved, and the research just now was started again. Shen Long couldn't help but feel happy when he saw this. Great, he finally woke up. If he doesn't wake up, he may have to think of some drastic measures. After all, no one has summoned the ancient Caillou for so many years. Who knows if he can wake up again? If he can, it's best. If he can't, it's best. If it works, he can only use those extreme methods. "Who summoned me?" After the ancient Caillou said these words slowly, the leader of Caillou immediately stepped forward and knelt down, and kowtowed at the ancient Caillou several times. "I'm sorry to bother you, seniors and juniors. The main reason why your descendants are bothering you this time is the Dragon Clan's affairs." Then the leader Caillou told the ancient Caillou everything about their visit. The ancient Caillou did not make any move after hearing it. The leader Caillou waited patiently below. He couldn't help but be a little surprised. He didn't expect that the purpose of their visit this time was actually this Shen Long. They had never told him before. After that, he looked at Shen Long, but it was a pity that Shen Long never after seen him. Even if he wanted to ask, now was not the time. He could only endure it slowly, and it would not be too late to ask after everything was completed. Shen Long narrowed his eyes slightly and kept looking at the ancient Caillou, not knowing what he was doing. "Do you agree or not?" It's not a big problem to say this. During the time just now, ancient Caillou thought about it for a long time. Originally, he was afraid that the Dragon Clan would threaten the God Clan, so he deliberately used this method. But now it seems that the Dragon Clan can no longer threaten the God Clan, let alone the Dragon Clan. He has completely transformed himself into a god, and the Demon Clan here will no longer accept the Dragon Clan. After hearing this, Shen Long couldn't help but feel happy in his heart. He originally thought that he would have to spend a lot of words to convince the ancient Caillou, but he didn't expect he actually figured it out on his own, which saved him from wasting more time. In this case, "Thank you, sir." Shen Long's gratitude came from the bottom of his heart this time. He saluted the leader without kneeling down, but what he didn't expect was that Yazan next to him ran over consciously and knelt before the ancient Caillou. Next to him, he kowtowed several times. Ever since the ancient Caillou appeared, he had felt an inexplicable sense of oppression, and now the ancient Caillou actually agreed to lift the seal of their non-clan, which can be regarded as a good thing for their Dragon Clan. Of course I have to thank myself, the younger generation of the Dragon Clan. Yazui, thanks the ancient Caillou. Yazui was very sincere. After saying this, he looked up at the ancient Caillou. Chapter 534. The ancient Caillou did not disappoint Yazan. With a flick of his hand, he saw a purple light between his fingers, slowly pouring into the lotus, and the lotus bloomed even more coquettishly. "I have already taken care of this matter, so you don't need to thank me in particular. This is a punishment that should have been removed long ago." The ancient Caillou was very gentle when he said this, without any emotion in it, as if he was not the one who made such a decision. At the same time, the bone dragon who was originally locked in the small stove also it came out slowly, but its body continued to grow bigger, and then circled around the ancient Caillou several times. Yazan also opened his eyes wide when he saw this. Shen Long hadn't told him that there was another dragon here, and even more, what's more, this dragon was from his ancestor's generation. At first glance, Shen Long didn't have time to explain to Yajiduo. He stared closely at the bone dragon. Although the dragon looked more energetic now, his body it was slowly becoming transparent. Along with it, there was also the statue of ancient Caillou. Shen Long also reacted when he saw this. "I still need to explain some things. Although the punishment has been removed, You need to be vigilant at all times and never disobey God. Shen Long felt a little unhappy after hearing this. In ancient times, Caillou's tone was nothing more than treating the Dragon Clan as outsiders. In addition, the Dragon Clan is getting weaker and weaker now. It really should be improved and practiced quickly, otherwise you will perish yourself without others taking action. Shen Long narrowed his eyes slightly after hearing this. He also had this idea, but he never said it directly. Now the ancient Caillou said it for him. By the way, Shen Long, I have to thank you very much for this matter. The Dragon Clan owes you a big favor from now on. Gu Long specially shouted to Shen Long before disappearing. After hearing this, Shen Long closed his eyes slightly and nodded. In fact, what Shen Long wanted was not this kind of kindness at all. He just simply wanted to help the Dragon Clan, that's all. After hearing this, Yazen next to him also silently remembered those words in his heart. In the future, Shen Long will be their Dragon Clan's great benefactor. He must remember to repay his kindness. Do you feel anything wrong with your body right now? Shen Long finally looked at Yazen. He was very curious whether there would be any changes in Yazen now. After hearing this, Yazen felt it carefully. He could clearly feel that the feeling of weakness in his body was gone, and he could feel that his magic power seemed to have increased a little. Finally, he told Shen Long everything he felt. After thinking about it, Shen Long thought that most likely their seal had been lifted. Come here and let me heal you. After Shen Long said this, he sat down on your big rock again, and Yazen ran over and sat down obediently. Then Shen Long slowly kicked Yazen to heal his injuries, and slowly absorbed the spiritual energy in his body. He crossed into Yazui's body, and then guided him to repair all of the injured parts of Yazui's body. Yazui could also feel that his whole body was different now, and his strength had increased a lot. Unlike the restrained one before, the feeling was completely different. At this moment, Shen Long suddenly felt that his interest Liang couldn't get in, and was bounced back. Chapter 535. Shen Long's eyes narrowed slightly and he stopped what he was doing. Yazen also looked at Shen Long curiously. Shen Long sighed and started talking to Yazen. Now I feel like there is something in your body that is repelling me, and there is a certain rebound. This situation must be avoided. After Shen Long said this, he also thought about it seriously. What on earth stopped him from checking? However, Shen Long did not tell Yazen all the doubts in his heart. If he had told him everything, he couldn't help but make a big fuss. After that, the three of them went down the mountain together. This time, the way down the mountain was not that difficult. They found a path full of green life, and they were able to walk down it easily. Wait until they go down. After that, Shen Long stopped and looked at Leader Caillou. Leader Caillou naturally couldn't continue walking with them. He was going to come back from another way. Thank you very much for this incident. If it weren't for you, things probably wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Shen Long stepped forward and took Leader Caillou's hand in a friendly manner to thank him. Leader Caillou also felt a little embarrassed after hearing this. After all, Shen Long was the one doing the hard work most of the time and it had nothing to do with him. We'll see each other again. After saying this, they parted ways, and Shen Long returned to the Dragon Palace with Yazen. After they returned to the Dragon Palace, they saw the Dragon Mother waiting anxiously, because he didn't wait until he was halfway through this matter. You know, before this he had been looking for Shen Long and Yazen. Without seeing the two of them, he felt uncomfortable all over. Even after he found out that the two of them had gone out for something, he still felt a little uncomfortable. He was panicking and always felt a little uncomfortable in his body. When he saw that Shen Long was back and that life was still following Yazen, he breathed a sigh of relief and was not as nervous as before. Finally, I'm back, which saves me from worrying every day. After saying this, Mother Long reached out and patted her chest, and slowly calmed down. After Shen Long heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched, and he didn't know what to say. He could only say that Mother Long was worried. Too much. What are you afraid of? I will follow Shen Long, and Shen Long will protect me. After hearing this, the Mother of Dragons felt a little embarrassed and looked at her secretly. Shen Long found out at a glance that Shen Long didn't care, so he breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Shen Long would misunderstand and felt that he had underestimated his strength. By the way, Where is the history of the Dragon clan? I'd like to take a look." Mother of Dragon was slightly startled after hearing this. If others wanted to see it, he would naturally disagree, but Shen Long would have another story. Then he found the Dragon King and told the Dragon King about the matter. After the Dragon King heard this, he took Shen Long to their library without saying anything. The annals of history are a very precious thing for our dragon to make. Generally, we don't show them to him during missions. However, you are my great benefactor. If you want to see it, there is no problem, but please keep it secret. Along the way, the Dragon King continued to explain. After hearing this, Shen Long nodded repeatedly and kept these in his heart. The Dragon King didn't say much and shut up after saying a few words. But he also believed in Shen Long. With Long's character, he will definitely keep his promise. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 536. After entering the library, Shen Long suddenly remembered that Yazan might not be able to hold on for that long. So he went out again and asked the Dragon King to call Yazan over. After Yazan came over, Shen Long took out a few herbs that he had worked so hard to collect. "This time you went up with us and suffered some injuries. If you don't get treatment quickly, you may not be able to recover for the rest of your life. Let's give you these herbs to save your life." After Shen Long said this, I saw that the expressions of Dragon King and Yazan were a little bad. I originally thought that I would be healthy and nothing would happen. After hearing what Shen Long said, I feel uncomfortable all over my body. Don't scare me, I still want to live for several hundred more years. After hearing this, Shen Long smiled and patted his shoulder. He would definitely try his best to help him and let him live for several hundred more years. Then Shen Long entered the library and found a book he needed to read. Because there was no need to worry too much about the book outside, he sat directly on the chair next to him and began to read seriously. Shen Long looked at it for a long time without seeing what he needed, but he couldn't wait to spend it. It took about 3 days and 3 nights to finally finish reading the whole book. When he went out, he saw Yazan waiting for him outside. After Yazan saw Shen Long come out, he raised his head to look at Shen Long. "Stare into your own eyes, you finally came out. I thought you wouldn't come out." Recently, Yazan felt that his body was getting worse and worse, and he was afraid that he would not be able to support Shen Long when he came out. "Don't worry, don't be afraid, I have found a way to teach you." Then after you said this, you started to walk forward. Yazan insisted and followed closely. Then they arrived at a room arranged by the Dragon King. After entering, Shen Long said to Yazan directly, "There are some things I didn't tell you when we went out this time, so I'll confess them to you now. The strength of your dragon clan was sealed by Caillou. One time, the main purpose was to solve this problem. I didn't expect you to come here, so if you were accidentally injured, you don't have to worry too much. I have already found a way to cure you. All you have to do is use the blood from your heart as a medicine and drop it on the lotus." Actually, Shen Long didn't find out how to treat Yazan, but he finally came up with a method based on the book and his own ideas. As long as the lotus flower has enough power to drip the blood from his heart, the dragon clan can, then the seal will gradually be broken, and the dragon people will not die so easily if they have their own true strength. After hearing this, Yazan smiled. "If there is a way, then he is not afraid anymore. I admit that I was a bit reckless this time and caused you a lot of trouble. I won't do that again." After saying this, he suddenly remembered that he had done so many stupid things along the way, and that Shen Long was working hard for their dragon clan. He blushed all of a sudden and felt embarrassed. In the end he looked at Shen Long secretly, and saw that Shen Long was still working hard to help him think of a better way, and he felt even more sorry for Shen Long. He was obviously a member of the dragon clan, and he should do what he could do by himself to solve it. Wait for him to get an outsider to help, and he is still causing trouble. Chapter 537. Originally, Yazan thought that the blood was his own or the blood of others in the dragon clan, but what he didn't expect was that Shen Long actually used a knife to scratch his arm. Seeing this, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. and hurriedly went up to help Shen Long hold down his arm. "Are you saying you don't need new blood? Just take me or other dragons. You are our savior, so I am embarrassed to let you get the blood out again." After saying this, he saw the blood overflowing from his fingertips, which made him feel very sorry. Shen Long shook his head. "If you can, of course you can, but the strength of the Dragon Clan seems not enough. Your strength is still sealed and you can only rely on me." After Shen Long said this, he directly pushed Yazin away so as not to delay Yazin. He slowly controlled the blood in his hand and poured the blood into the lotus. See how the lotus bloomed. He became more graceful and began to slowly rotate around. "Can you see here? You feel that you are most likely doing nothing wrong." Then he surpassed the lotus and slowly transferred the energy on the lotus to Yazin's body. Yazin felt that he was soon enveloped by a warm current. This was a comfortable feeling that he had never enjoyed before. Yazin took a deep breath and felt that there was more and more spiritual power in his body. It wouldn't be long before his eyesight could be restored. In the end, Yazin also saw that the injuries on his body were slowly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Could this be the benefit of what Caillou gave them? It was more powerful than he imagined. Then after dealing with the matter on Yanju's side, he was sure that his idea was feasible, and finally he called the Dragon King over. The Dragon King didn't know much about these things, so Shen Long and Yihao, two people together, we explained everything to him. "I didn't expect that our Dragon Clan was so unpopular in the past, and our power was always sealed." After the Dragon King said this, he obviously felt a lot lower. "But fortunately, Shen Long helped us solve these things, otherwise we would probably have to suffer for thousands of years." After saying this, he excitedly grabbed Shen Long. Now Shen Long has helped them in the Dragon Palace so many times, let alone Shen Long who wants his life. Even if he wants to kill the entire Dragon Palace, he would probably be willing to. "I first helped a few people to lift the seals on them, but there are so many people in your Dragon Clan, I can't help them all. Let those whose seals have been lifted help those whose seals have not been lifted to continue passing on like this." In the end, the first person Shen Long helped was the Dragon King. He first lifted the seal on the Dragon King of the East China Sea, and then lifted the seals on the Dragon Mother and the Scarlet Shadow Dragon. After that, Shen Long didn't care about this matter anymore. A few days later, he heard the good news brought to him by the Dragon King of the East China Sea, saying that the dragons in their Dragon Palace had basically been released from the seal, and their strength had been greatly enhanced. "I told the dragons in other sea areas about this 2 days ago. I guess they are also trying now. It won't be long before the dragons can regain their glory." In this way, things on the East China Sea side have almost been settled, and Shen Long will have nothing to do after that. Chapter 538. I always feel that life is going smoothly and I can't do anything, which is a bit boring. The entire Dragon Clan has been particularly calm recently, with their restored strength. Foreign invaders naturally do not dare to attack them easily, and many people show their kindness to them. The people of the Dragon Clan have now tasted the sweetness. Not to mention fairies, even gods and goddesses look at their face, making them feel particularly dignified. Shen Long took a quick look and found that the Dragon Clan people didn't have any worries now. It was precisely because he was too bored now that he decided that he might as well go out and have some fun, see wherever he went, and take a good look around the world. Shen Long told the Dragon King of the East China Sea and the Dragon King of the East China Sea about his idea. Although he was a little unhappy, he still agreed. How could he have the right to interfere with what his benefactor wanted to do? But the outside world was so dangerous, and he was afraid that something bad might happen to Shen Long. But he thought that Shen Long was so powerful, so he wasn't so worried. After that, Shen Long finally left the East China Sea, as soon as he landed, and when he was about to walk to the next mountain, something suddenly appeared in front of him. This thing is white. It looks like a white sheep, but it doesn't look like it. It has amber eyes and some patterns on its body. It looks very beautiful. "Hello, I'm Beizi. I'm here mainly because I have something I want to tell you." After Beizi said this, I breathed a sigh of relief. Originally, he was still hesitating whether he should go into the water. If his beautiful hair goes into the water, it will definitely wrinkle into a ball, but I didn't expect him to hesitate here. Shen Long came up by himself. Shen Long was also looking at Beizi secretly. He thought Sanhe was very beautiful. If possible, he would like to go up and touch Beizi's fur, but Beizi probably wouldn't want to. He knew that things like the mythical beast Beizi still had a temper. If he touched it so suddenly, he would probably start a fight with him, and the gain would not be worth the loss. This matter is particularly important, so you should listen carefully. After Shen Long heard this, he looked at Beizi quietly, waiting for him to continue. He had also heard of Beizi, but he didn't know why he came to him so suddenly. It's like this. Fuxi is going to hold a grand ceremony. The main participants of this grand ceremony are you, and he wants to invite you to come with him. This time, I was specially sent to inform you. Although Shen Long didn't react on the surface after hearing this, he was already surprised in his heart. Why did Hao Duan suddenly ask him to participate? What's more, Fuxi hasn't held any events for many years. Are you serious with me? Does he really want to invite me? Shen Long thought it would be better for him to confirm it carefully. After hearing this, Beizi nodded firmly. This is natural. If it were not certain, I would certainly not come to you. But Shen Long still had doubts in his heart, so he asked his doubts directly. But he had never specifically organized this kind of celebration before, and even if he had, it was a long time ago. Why did he do it again so suddenly? Since I want to go, I must understand everything clearly, otherwise, who knows if I will encounter any trouble there. Chapter 539. Beizi sighed helplessly after hearing this. Fuxi originally didn't like these things like counting, so he always didn't do it if he could. But it's no longer possible. The situation now is different from before. If possible, I believe Fuxi would definitely decide not to do this cleaning to save him the trouble. But the current situation is different from the past. If he really doesn't do it, he is likely to run into trouble. After hearing this, Shen Long felt a little bit experienced. He really didn't expect that something as sacred as Fuxi would be in trouble. I wonder if I can ask who this trouble refers to, him or us? After hearing this, Beizi hesitated for a moment, wondering whether he should tell Shen Long all the facts. But he thought again, most people already knew about this matter. Since Shen Long was also going to attend the celebration, then it would be better to tell him directly. You'd better not spread this matter randomly. Only those of you who are attending the celebration will be told. Then Beizi started talking to himself, while Shen Long was silently digesting the huge information he heard. He didn't expect that there was such a big contradiction between the gods. Since the Buddha didn't know unknowingly, he stretched out his hand to Fuxi. The Buddha had done many things before and even embarrassed Xuanzang. Now they dare to embarrass Fuxi. Isn't this obviously seeking death? Don't worry, I already know everything. After Shen Long said this, he was slowly digesting it. Such a large amount of information has already emerged. How was Fuxi usually embarrassed by the Buddha? I really didn't expect that the Buddha would really dare to do this. Isn't he afraid that all his followers will run away after his own affairs are exposed? However, things between gods are indeed not very good. Generally speaking, mortals in the car will not expose these things to mortals. This is why the Buddha dared to be so arrogant. Just when Shen Long wanted to follow Beizi, he suddenly remembered that he had not explained to the Dragon King of the East China Sea, so he returned to the sea and found the Dragon King of the East China Sea. Next, I will go to the celebration organized by Fuxi. I'm not sure when I will come back, so you don't have to worry about me. Actually, there is no need for him to explain this matter to the Dragon King, but he still wants to say a few more words to the Dragon King of the East China Sea to prevent anything from happening again in the Dragon Palace. It was he who finally cultivated the Dragon Palace to be what it is now bit by bit. He couldn't bear to see what he had finally cultivated being destroyed. After hearing this, the Dragon King of the East China Sea felt a little envious. No one in their Dragon Palace was qualified to go to a celebration held by a great god like Fuxi. But I didn't expect Shen Long to be able to go. I wish you a safe journey. If you go quickly and come back soon. Then he suddenly thought of something and said suddenly, while I am away, don't let any Dragon Clan people get out of the water. After hearing this, the Dragon King of the East China Sea pondered seriously. Although their freedom was somewhat restricted, it didn't matter so much. "Don't worry. I promise you it's quite dangerous to go out. Just stay inside." After the Dragon King of the East China Sea finished saying this, he waved his hand towards Shen Long, feeling a little reluctant to let go of Shen Long in his heart. Chapter 540. Originally, Shen Long decided that he really wanted to leave, but he suddenly remembered that when Yazin went out by himself before, Yazin followed him out secretly regardless of his order. He didn't know if Yazin would come again this time, but in order to avoid it, he had to make foolproof preparations. Then he found Yazin with it and gave the book he had prepared before. "You see, I prepared this book before. Take this book and study it carefully." After Shen Long said this, he slightly raised the corners of his mouth. Now that Yazin has something to do, he won't be pestering him all the time. Yazin looked at the book in his hand and felt something was not right. It was comfortable. If Shen Long usually gave it to him, he would naturally be very happy. However, Shen Long gave him this book just to perfunctory him, which made him feel a little unhappy. "I know what you are thinking, but you still can't leave the Dragon Palace, because if you go out, you will probably cause trouble to me." Shen Long was extremely serious when he said this. After hearing this, Yazin slowly grasped the book in his hand and nodded. Finally, when they were going up Jiakon Mountain together, they suddenly met Pixiu. After seeing Beizi, Pixiu was going to go another way, but suddenly ran over and blocked them in front of them. Why didn't Beizi see him changing lanes halfway? So he stopped coldly, looking at Pixiu with a wide face. "You have to be careful. This Pixiu is not a good thing." Beizi did not forget to remind Shen Long secretly. Shen Long nodded after hearing this and already remembered it in his heart. "Yo, isn't this Beizi? I brought a human with me today." After Beizi heard this, he went back without saying a word. "Yes, today I brought back a human who is more powerful than you. Do you think you haven't practiced well recently? Why are you so bad at knowing the law?" After saying this, the two of them started to quarrel, but it was not good for Beizi to see Shen Long standing next to him. Shen Long saw that the two of them kept arguing, so he stopped it in time. "Pixiu doesn't want to say more. I won't bother you too much about this matter today. I'll let you go first." After Pixiu said this, he gritted his teeth viciously and went down the indirect road to Beizi. He kept frowning when he saw this. "And don't take it too seriously, he's usually like this." After saying this, Beizi clenched his fists in discomfort. If Shen Long hadn't been here, the two of them would have started fighting just now. Originally, they wanted to step forward, but what they didn't expect was that Pixiu actually came back and stood in front of them, raising his chin triumphantly. "I didn't see it just now, but now I can see it clearly. It turns out that you are bringing someone up. The new guy should not go with him, but come with me." After hearing this, Beizi clenched his fists, feeling that what Pixiu did was a bit too much, but Shen Long stopped Beizi and shook his head at him. "If possible, try not to do anything in this place to avoid happening unnecessary trouble. Sorry, it was Beizi who brought me here, so I naturally followed him. Thank you for your kindness." Now that Shen Long rejected his invitation outright, Pixiu couldn't say anything more. When Beizi saw this, he put down his fist. It just happened to save him from beating him up. Chapter 541. After hearing what Shen Long said, Pixiu narrowed his eyes slightly and looked unhappy, but before that, he had heard others talk about Shen Long, so he also knew that Shen Long was not someone to be trifled with. In this case, he will naturally not get into trouble. "I won't bother you too much today. For the sake of outsiders, I'll save your face." After saying this, Pixiu snorted coldly, turned around and left. It seemed that Fuxi didn't want to give Beizi face. Beizi glanced at the back of him leaving and curled his lips as usual. If he wanted to give him face, why, don't avoid it from the beginning. Insist on saying a few more words. Don't worry about him. That's what he is like. One day he will completely make me angry, and you will see how I deal with him. After saying this, Beizi had already begun to imagine the scene in which he would beat Paiziyu violently in the future. "So why did you two break up on bad terms?" Although Shen Long is not a gossip, he still needs to understand the basic things. After hearing this, Beizi remembered some bad memories. Originally, he didn't want to tell Shen Long, After all, Shen Long as he was an outsider, but he thought it was not good to keep this matter bottled up, so he just told it all. The entire fairy world probably knows how close we were before. I originally thought we could be lifelong friends, but who would have thought that he actually had different ideas from me? Actually, it's normal to have different ideas. After all, they are not the same person. They each have their own opinions. But what went too far for Pai Ziyu was that he actually went to help Gong Gong. What do you think he thought? He actually went to help Gong Gong. Not only was he mentally ill at the time, but he is still ill now and should be ungrateful. Fortunately, I am no longer his friend, otherwise he would have driven me crazy. After saying this, Beizi took several breaths angrily, and then started to complain again, and his resentment continued. After all, he was so good to Pixiu at the beginning. Who would have thought that he would turn out to be a white-eyed wolf in the end? Are you so sincere in helping Pixiu? So you two stopped playing because of this matter? In fact, I don't think it's necessary. He does his own thing and you do yours, as long as they don't interfere with each other. When the time comes to hang out, we'll still be friends, and you have to know where you stand. This is Shen Long's most impressive opinion. After all, he has no experience in this matter and doesn't know how to deal with it. When mentioning this matter, Beizi was full of helplessness. He also thought the same at the time, but only I can think of that person Pixiu who is stubborn and unwilling to listen no matter how much he tries to persuade him. At that time, I just tried to persuade him, but who would have thought that he would not listen to my advice? Instead, he would turn against me and quarrel with me. How could I endure such a thing? If he got along well with me, of course I wouldn't make such a fuss with him. When talking about this incident, Beizi became very angry. It was all Gong Gong's fault. If it weren't for Gong Gong, how could he and Pixiu be in such trouble? After hearing this, Shen Long he didn't comment too much and nodded. Since it was a matter between the two of them, it was naturally difficult for him to get involved. He just hoped that the matter between the two of them would not affect him too much. Chapter 542. For some reason, Shen Long also had an inexplicable sense of prediction. He felt that a war in the fairy world would start soon. Buddha would not let go of his goal easily, and Fuxi and the others were not easy to mess with. If Buddha wanted to provoke this war, he would naturally not stop it. After Beizi took Shen Long up the mountain, he arranged a place for him and had people bring him food. Don't stay here in a hurry. Fuxi still has things to do. He will naturally come to see you after they are done. If you need anything, you can always ask my servants to tell me. Beizi walked around deliberately. Seeing that the environment here was good, he nodded with satisfaction. Fuxi specifically told him to take care of Zhuhair as he would naturally make arrangements easily. Shen Long was eating. He stayed here after the meal, and he was not in a hurry. He knew that Fuxi was not a person who could endure it, not to mention that the war was coming, and the other party would come to him soon. So Shen Long he waited quietly, but what he didn't expect was that Fuxi would come over in the middle of the night despite not coming during the day. I'm really sorry to disturb your rest at such a late hour. Fuxi saw Shen Long's strange eyes and knew what Shen Long was thinking. He simply explained to Shen Long that Buddha and the others had already arrived here. They also brought many other Buddhas with them, so they came over to find Shen Long so comfortably to avoid exposing Shen Long's identity. Shen Long didn't say much after hearing this. They probably didn't know about going up the mountain otherwise, but it won't be long before Pixiu will probably tell they. The most important thing now is how to deal with Buddha. It will definitely be difficult to deal with so many people coming over there. When I asked Beizi to pick you up, I specifically told him to avoid Pixiu, but I didn't expect that we bumped into him anyway. He didn't rush into you too much. I don't know what to say to him about that kid. Fuxi's mother was helpless when he talked about this matter. He had always regarded Beizi and Pai Ziyu very seriously before, but he didn't expect that Pai Ziyu would change his mind temporarily and join someone else. Fortunately, he had been so good to Pai Ziyu before, and now everything has changed. It was in vain. After Shen Long heard this, I shook my head. In fact, he thought it was okay. Pixiu had no problem with him. What's more, if Pixiu really wanted to do something to him, he could punish Pixiu at any time, making him regret what he said to him. However, It seems that Pixiu also knew that he was not as strong as him, so he did not conflict with him more, or even refuse to talk to him more. What Pixiu said to him before the words seemed to be deliberately testing him to see if he wanted to be with them, but he refused, and Pixiu couldn't say much more. These are not the main things. You called me here specifically this time. You must have something to say, just say it directly. There is no one else here. Originally Fuxi wanted to chat with Shen Long for a while, but he didn't expect Shen Long to go straight to the point and ask him to speak out. And Shen Long was not willing to talk so much nonsense. He had been waiting here for so long. Just figure out what exactly you are going to do this time. Staying here is not the way to go. If the vice president sends someone to check, it will be troublesome. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 543. Fuxi's mouth twitched slightly after hearing what Shen Long said. He originally wanted to say a few more words to Shen Long. Well, he could close the distance between the two of them so that Shen Long could feel his warmth, make it easier to talk later. But what he didn't expect was that Shen Long actually liked such concise and straightforward conversations. But it was good this way. It would save him the effort to talk so much nonsense. Since you have brought it up, I will tell you directly. You also know the main purpose of coming this time. I want to ask Buddha if you have any clues. Tell me all the bad things he did. Ever since Buddha began to interfere in Fuxi's affairs, Fuxi began to find excuses for Buddha. But what made him feel a little helpless was that Buddha did so many bad things, but he hid them well every time, making it difficult for others to find excuses. After Shen Long heard this, I shook my head. Although he had heard some rumors, he didn't know the details. What's more, how could the Buddha let others catch him so easily? I don't know the specifics, but I've heard that he caused others not to investigate before. I can give you a list, and you can just follow this list to find people. After saying this, Shen Long picked up a pen and paper and wrote down several names. Fortunately, he glanced at it several times and remembered these names in his mind. Otherwise he wouldn't have done it. He knew how to answer now. Fuxi took the piece of paper over and read it carefully. He was slightly surprised. There were two names on it that he was familiar with. He had also heard about these two people before. Originally, he was just asking tentatively to see if Shen Long had any clues, but he didn't expect that Shen Long would actually write everything down. Thanks to you. Now that I have the names of these people, I don't have to worry about having no clues. After saying this, Fuxi slowly dropped the piece of paper and put it into his sleeve. He was ready to go back and let people search for it. Shen Long nodded, and then thought after thinking about it, I planned to tell Fuxi about my choice. In fact, there is another serious matter. I don't know if you know that Sun Wukong just made a big fuss at Buddha's place a few days ago. It was quite a big fuss. It is unclear whether Buddha found someone to suppress this matter. Buddha deliberately set up a trap to make Xuanzang and the others miserable. After Shen Long said this, he saw Fuxi's eyes light up and he kept looking at him. When he saw this, he understood. Most likely, Fuxi didn't know about this, so in the end he just said this matter was explained in detail, and the cause and effect were explained. Fuxi nodded repeatedly after hearing this. He had trusted Buddha before, so he never monitored him, but he did not expect that the other party was under the eyes of so many gods. Do you really think they are dead people when they do such extreme things? At the same time, he is a little worried that if Buddha dares to do this, he must have a way to protect himself. Thinking of this, Fuxi became worried, and he stretched out his hand to rub his own temple. He just felt that things were more troublesome than he thought. There is one more thing I want to tell you. I think Buddha is most likely related to Gong. Chapter 544. While the two of them were discussing Buddha's affairs here, Buddha was also acting secretly. He knew very well that Shen Long had gone up the mountain, because he had met Shen Long before, so he knew that Shen Long still had two skills, so he had to take precautions as soon as possible. At the same time, Pixiu specifically sought out Bai Zi, It was precisely because the two of them had a very close relationship before that it was easy for him to find Beizi. Beizi was staying in his room. He opened the door when he heard the knock on the door, but he didn't expect that the person standing outside was Paiziyu. His face suddenly turned cold. "What are you doing here? Get out quickly." After saying this, he kicked Pixiu on the body and wanted to close the door, but what he didn't expect was that Pixiu pushed the door open forcefully and walked in. "Don't be so nervous and don't have any ill intentions towards me. I'm just here to persuade you on something." After saying this, he didn't look outside and took Beizi's hand. Originally, he wanted to review the tenderness they had experienced before with Beizi, but what he didn't expect was that Beizi was particularly "I threw away my hand in disgust. Don't go out with me telling you so much useless nonsense." When Pixiu saw this, he didn't force it, and then he told all the purpose of his coming this time. "I came here this time because I regard you as my friend. After all, the two of us played well before, so I want to persuade you to become Gong Gong's subordinate with me." After Paiziyu said this, he saw Beizi widen his eyes slightly, looking very surprised. Then Beizi pushed him and insisted on pushing him out. He originally thought that Paiziyu would change his mind, but what he didn't expect was that Pixiu would be so completely unrepentant and even want to drag himself into the fire pit. Originally, Pixiu sincerely wanted to persuade Yuhao, but as soon as he said it, Beizi wouldn't listen. He explained more, pushed him directly out of the door, and closed the door. Looking at the closed door, Pixiu had no idea for a moment. Just when he was wondering how he should get in, he suddenly saw there was a person next to him. The person slowly walked out of the darkness, and Pixiu could see the other person's face clearly. The person who came was Buddha. "It seems that things are not going well here. In that case, you might as well let me help you solve this matter." After saying this, the Buddha stretched out his hand and flicked it slightly without Pixiu's consent. The originally closed wooden door cracked open, and Beizi inside stood up and looked at him warily. Looking at the Buddha, he didn't expect that the Buddha would be so bold and would do such a thing on Fuxi's territory. Before it could harm anyone, the Buddha injected something into his body. Beizi felt a little nervous. "Check your body quickly. You don't need to be nervous. I just got some number 5 for you. As long as you obey me, I will naturally not attack you." Buddha knew that he was at a disadvantage now. If he could subdue Beizi, Fuxi's right-hand man, he would be able to regain the upper hand. Chapter 545. Now there are only two roads before Beizi: either obey the Buddha and be sentenced to Fuzai, or die here. So this time you two have made all plans early on. If I don't agree, you will use this method to force me. Originally, Beizi still had some expectations for Paiziyu, but what he didn't expect was that their once so friendly friends were worthless now. After hearing this, Paiziyu clenched his fist slightly, feeling a little uncomfortable in his heart. In fact, she didn't have this idea. He did all this for his own benefit, and of course some of it was because of Beizi, but Beizi couldn't understand him at all, and he couldn't explain much. "Why are you talking so much useless nonsense? Now you should think carefully about whether to agree to me." After Buddha finished saying this, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and it seemed that he already knew the result. He thought about the matter very clearly. If Beizi could submit to him, it would be great if he could control Beizi together in the future. There is Pixiu. Of course, if Beizi would rather die than surrender, he can also directly detonate the witchcraft in Beizi's body. By then, Beizi will be completely useless. Fuxi has lost Yuhao, his right-hand man, and it is estimated that in the following days it will be more difficult, and it will also be a favorable situation for you. I have nothing to say to you, and I will definitely not surrender to you. After Beizi said this, under Fuzai's explanation, he poured all the spiritual energy in his body into the witch goo. Seeing this, Fuzai couldn't help but sneered. He felt that everything Beizi had done was useless. Like a joke, how could that thing be removed so easily? When Pixiu next to her saw this, she felt a little unbearable in her heart. She wanted to persuade Beizi to give up, but he found that Beizi had been. As I stared at it, my eyes were red, and all the words I originally wanted to say were choked in my throat, and I couldn't say anything. "Don't look at me like that. I owe all of my current situation to you. Bei said to Pai Ziyu fiercely. After saying this, he gritted his teeth and continued to remove the witchcraft from his body. Just when the Buddha was about to take action, the witchcraft was suddenly removed. It seems that this witchcraft is not very good. Since it has no effect on me, I got rid of it so easily. Beizi was obviously a little surprised by this, and soon he laughed very arrogantly. After hearing this, Buddha felt that his face was completely shameless, and he was a little embarrassed. At this moment, Pai Ziyu next to him suddenly holding Buddha's hand, he knew that Buddha was definitely going to take action now. Beizi was no match for Buddha, but he couldn't bear to see Beizi injured. Let's leave quickly. There's so much movement here. According to my understanding of this place, someone will be here soon. After hearing this, Buddha glanced at Beizi with some dissatisfaction, but had no choice but to leave. After hearing this, Beizi glanced at Buddha and Pai Ziyu with some confusion. Obviously Pai Yao and him most clearly. There was no one here at all. He liked peace and quiet, so he asked everyone to stay away. It was obvious that Pixiu was helping him. Chapter 546. After the two people left completely, Beizi felt that his whole body was weak. He had been tense just now, but now he could finally relax. As soon as he relaxed, he felt that his whole body was weak, his legs were out of control, and he couldn't use any strength at all, and finally collapsed on the ground. But the good thing is that even if Pixiu took the Buddha away, it still gave Beizi a chance to breathe. She quickly cleaned up and talked about some of her injuries. Beizi went to see Shen Long early the next morning. He didn't tell Shen Long what happened last night. Instead, he told Shen Long what was going on. What you cook here is quite moist, right? The chefs here cook the best food. After talking about the food here, I felt a little jealous. He couldn't even taste the food made by this cook, but he didn't expect that Shen Long would be able to eat it when he came here. After receiving it, Shen Long was slightly Yixiao asked him to make more for the first time and bring it to Beizi to prepare. Beizi sat there and nodded with a smile, and then his expression suddenly condensed. There is one more thing I want to tell you. In fact, just now he remembered that Shen Long seemed to be a member of the Dragon clan. Shen Long nodded after hearing this. He could tell from the beginning that there seemed to be something going on, but since Beizi didn't want to take the initiative to mention it to him, and he won't ask more. After all, this is someone else's private matter, and it doesn't have much to do with him. He is mainly here to deal with big things. You are also a member of the Dragon clan. In this case, can you help me persuade Pixiu? I really have no way to control it. After saying this, Beizi sighed tiredly, and it seemed that he was exhausted. After hearing this, Shen Long frowned slightly. If he remembered correctly, when he first came, Beizi Zihuan and Pai Ziyu were constantly arguing, and they were incompatible with each other. But they didn't expect that in just a short time, a change had occurred between the two of them. Beizi actually came over and asked him to persuade Pai Ziyu. It seemed that what happened between the two of them last night made Beizi look like this. However, he did not speak for a long time. Instead, he kept driving Beizi, which made Beizi feel a little embarrassed for a while. He was also aware of Shen Long's doubts, but he didn't want to talk so much to Shen Long. After all, it would be bad to talk too much about the things between the two of them. What's more, Shen Long probably didn't want to get involved in this matter. He didn't want to trouble others too much. Just when he wanted to say that if it was too much trouble, he didn't need to do it, Shen Long suddenly spoke. If possible, can you tell me everything that happened last night? I will refer to it carefully before making plans. Beizi nodded after hearing this, and no longer concealed anything, and told all the things that happened last night. After hearing this, Shen Long felt that what Beizi said was very close to what he imagined. Exactly. Because of this, he felt even more surprised. He just had this idea at the beginning, but he didn't expect that his sixth sense was so accurate, and he guessed it right again. There is still an unbreakable friendship between the two of them. Among them, it will be much easier to handle now. Even if Buddha and Fuxi really fight in the future, it may not affect the two of them. Chapter 547. In fact, the moment I saw Pixiu before, I felt that he was quite similar to you. It was natural that you two had been friends for so long before your personalities matched. It's just that each character has someone who needs help, so they part ways. Then he briefly explained the reason and then reached out and patted Bazi on the shoulder. In fact, he never thought about getting involved in this matter from the beginning. After all, he was already very busy with the Dragon Clan's affairs. There's no end to it. The matter of Buddha and Fuxi really can't be pushed away. What's more, if Buddha really succeeds, the Dragon Clan on his side will also have a hard time, so they came here specially to attend this banquet. But about Bazi, when it comes to Pixiu, he doesn't have so many reasons to interfere too much. What kind of wonderful things will happen between the two of them depends on their fate. Now don't be so reckless. It's not like you haven't persuaded him before. Since he insists on going his own way and is unwilling to do so, it means that he has probably made up his mind. What's more, you have always been helping Fuxi. No matter how much Pixiu persuades you, you still don't agree. This just proves that the two of you have very similar personalities. Now Shen Long always feels that the two of them will become friends in the end. It depends on which one of them is willing to give up first. But here he feels that Bazi will probably not give up so easily. After all, Fuxi is a very good person. People are of the upright side. Bazi will naturally not join the dark side for his friends. He will just be sad. As for Pixiu, he doesn't pay too much attention to it, so he doesn't know what's going on there. What is the situation like? Bazi sighed after listening to what Shen Long said. I don't know what you said, but so what if I know? I still want to be friends with him again, but I can't do it anymore. After saying this, Bazi sighed helplessly and looked at Shen Long helplessly. He only hoped that Shen Long could agree as soon as possible. After hearing this, Shen Long shook his head. Logically speaking, if he was fine, maybe he would take care of it. But he really didn't want to take care of some things, not to mention that he and Bazi had just met not long ago, and the two of them were not very familiar with each other. Bazi must handle it by himself. There are so many things going on recently, so there is no need. Delayed because of Pixiu's affairs. If you really want to be friends with him, just wait and see what happens. Don't do so many things first, and watch what changes will happen on the day of the banquet. If you have the opportunity in the future, take your time. If you ask me to persuade you now, it will probably have the opposite effect and make him even more bored. After hearing what Bazi ordered, I felt that what Shen Long said made sense, and then he made arrangements for the banquet. The banquet started within a few days, and people from all walks of life came here, including those from Fuxi's side. On the Buddha's side, there are also some who don't take any side. They just come here to attend a banquet and watch the show. And these gods are also suspicious of each other when they are together. Even the two under Fuxi's hands. Individuals will also be suspicious of each other. Fuxi feels a special headache. Now that the enemy is approaching, the people under him are still suspicious of each other. Where does this make him lose face? Chapter 548. At first, Fuxi kept silently hiding behind and watching everyone's reactions, but in the end he couldn't help it anymore. Originally, he wanted to come later, but if it is later, it is very likely that things will change here, and it is also possible that they will start fighting within themselves before they can deal with the Buddha. When he entered, everyone around him became quiet and looked at her. Fuxi nodded with some satisfaction when he saw this scene. Although these people usually talk a little, the good thing is that everyone is willing to believe him and listen to what he says, and he can become quiet so quickly when he comes. This time, I specially called everyone here. There was nothing else to do. I just wanted to have a banquet and do something meaningful. By the way, if the usual meaningful things at banquets in the past were all kinds of small activities, it would be different this time. Everyone knows very well that there will most likely be some conflict between the two major sects. As for how many people will die in this conflict, it is still unclear. After Fuxi looked around for a week, he announced the banquet. Shen Long took a rough look at the gods who came around. She was not very familiar with these gods, so there were not many. A person who could talk to everyone. After he roughly said hello to everyone, he began to live a relatively leisurely life, eating food and drinking there. On his side, Fuxi had already begun to hesitate whether he should do it at this time. Tell me what happened. Nowadays, many people are very noble, and their food is naturally not bad. The chef was specially invited by Fuxi, so the skills are naturally not bad. Many people have never tasted the taste before, so it suddenly caused a stir. Here comes everyone's taste buds. Just as everyone was eating happily here, Fuxi suddenly said very seriously, "Get up." A more serious matter. This time, the main reason why everyone is anxious is to have a good talk with someone. I believe many of you know this. After Fuxi said these words, Shen Long put down his chopsticks and glanced at Fuxi. Originally, he thought it would take some time for Fuxi to mention this matter, but who could have imagined that it would come so soon? In this case, if so, you have to be prepared. Who knows when the two sides will fight? Buddha, I want to ask you something. Aren't you afraid that your magic power will be lost when you do so many things in your mind? On weekdays, you always think about how to help people in the world with compassion in mind. But why don't you take action when you actually encounter it? After Fuxi said these words, he stared at Buddha closely, and Buddha also felt a certain amount of oppression. What made him feel even more unhappy was that he, a great Buddha, was constantly being oppressed by Fuxi, and Fuxi it's just an unusual animal, so he didn't take Fuxi seriously at all. This is why he didn't provoke others, but insisted on intervening in Fuxi's affairs again and again. In addition, other things are of no concern to him. It was easier for him to talk, and Fuxi naturally didn't take Buddha seriously either. In his opinion, Buddha was just like a great god. Now the banquet was full of gunpowder, and a fight might break out at any time. The atmosphere was very weird, and there was many people were watching secretly. Chapter 549. When Buddha heard this question, he immediately knew that this person came specifically to ask these questions and make things difficult for him. She must have thought about it before coming here, and she wanted to point the finger directly at him. Of course, the Buddha was not a vegetarian. He immediately thought of a move and then retorted, "You asked me whether this issue has been investigated before. I am not responsible for this matter in the first place. Of course, it is impossible for all problems to come to me. Don't think I'm easy to bully either." Fuxi originally wanted to make things difficult for the Buddha. Now that he saw that he had such a tough attitude and seemed to accept the soft rather than the hard, he immediately became very angry. It was not easy to talk to him in front of all the gods. It's time to break up. But since he came up with this question, he just wanted to get the answer from the Buddha and see how he would answer. It was impossible to ask just to listen to his ridicule. At this time, the faces of the immortals, they all looked a bit ugly. They understood that this was a hangman banquet, and everyone had their own agenda. No one knew what would happen next, so they were all worried that the disaster would be diverted to themselves. Shen Long looked he was lazy and didn't care at all. He could even pick up the wine glass in his hand and drink to himself. He seemed to be full of interest. He was the only one and the most handsome one on the field. Buddha and Shen Long looked at each other. Both of them knew it very well. It contained thousands of meanings. The question I asked you just now, you evaded the important and trivial, which makes people doubt whether you really know some information. Why don't you share any news with everyone? The Buddha also knew about this matter. There was definitely no way to cover it up. There was no way. He had to imagine several plans in his mind, and then express them euphemistically in a very mellow way. If I knew, I would definitely tell you. If I didn't tell you, I probably didn't know. So don't doubt me. I was not involved in this, and I don't know what you are talking about. There was a sneer on Shen Long's lips, which seemed to be a bit sarcastic. In fact, few people knew about the fact that Buddha wanted to manipulate Beizi, but Beizi finally told him about it. If he were to take sides at this time, he would of course want to support Beizi's side, because Buddha's attitude at this time was very unclear, and he even had the intention of harming others. This person definitely could not follow. It was really dangerous to work with him. Fuxi didn't ask for any useful information, nor was he angry. He poured himself a large glass of wine and drank it all. I see that you are becoming more and more tactful as you live more. I remember that when we first met, you were not like you are now. In just a few years, you have changed so much. Shouldn't you reflect on it for a moment yourself? Or do you feel that you are not wrong at all? Buddha laughed loudly and stopped responding to this matter. Shen Long sat aside with an unpredictable expression. Everyone watched their faces change, and their hearts began to beat up and down. During a banquet, Everyone was the same person, except Shen Long and the others, who looked like they really came to this banquet. It was also very funny. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 550. Seeing that Fu Zai was acting recklessly, Shen Long had already guessed that he was fully prepared, so of course he could feel relieved. Buddha, on the other hand, did not want to show that he was guilty and let everyone guess some clues, so he was actually very panicked on the inside, and he kept pretending on the outside. Fuxi, on the other hand, seemed so calm because he had already grasped the Buddha's handle. Anyway, this matter cannot be explained clearly. No one can straighten out the relationship between it. The banquet continues like this. There are many fairies around who come to dance to cheer up. Everyone is also watching with a lack of interest and is not as happy as usual. Disgust. Shen Long saw it funny, so he couldn't help but said to everyone, "Why do I find this banquet more and more magical the more I watch it? You were not like this before. Aren't you usually very willing to discuss things? What's wrong with everyone today? Are you all so quiet? I also want to hear what interesting things happened recently. Can anyone tell me something?" As a god, his face is like a dish at this time. He dare not say anything more for fear that if he says more, he will be Fuxi has moved to the opposite side of himself. With their current strength, there is no way they can compete with these people in front of them. Since no one spoke, Shen Long smiled softly, but his voice seemed very abrupt. Just when the banquet seemed to have no way to continue, someone finally stood up near the end. The barefoot immortal was drunk, but his eyes were clear when he stepped forward. How could he let himself drink too much at such a banquet? He was obviously just pretending to let others relax their vigilance. Didn't Shen Long want to hear something fun just now? There are some things here that I just want to tell you about, some strange things that have happened in the world recently. All the immortals immediately became interested when they heard this, especially Shen Long, who changed his careless attitude and became serious. He sat up straight and looked at the barefoot immortal, wanting to hear more clearly. "You have quite a bit to say, and let us listen to any weird things to open our eyes," the barefoot immortal said slowly. His voice was deep and rich, full of storytelling style. "It's nothing strange, but it's nothing more than a sudden surge in the river. The water level dropped overnight and surged tens of meters, flooding countless farmland and homes. The government buildings that had been built in a patchwork manner suddenly disappeared overnight, as ashes disappear suddenly. There are also countless women who suddenly disappear on their way to get married. This matter has caused quite a big fuss and has now reached the heavens. You must have heard about it, and you probably all have heard of it, and I don't need to introduce it to you. Clearly, this is indeed strange." Buddha's face was full of sneers. Apparently he had already thought, or had known for a long time, that all these things were done by Pixiu, but for some unknown reason, he did not stand up and point it out at this moment. "Shen Long, his expression is a little unbearable. You'd better speak more clearly. What you said is so ambiguous. You just said some strange things, but you didn't mention some clues about this matter. You should know very comprehensive information, so why not just say it and let us go and take a look?" Who wanted to do this? It probably couldn't be Immortal. After all, it was the god in the sky. Chapter 551. Otherwise, there are so many petitions in this world. How should these gods deal with them? Each god has so many believers in public relations. If every petition can be heard by them, how annoying would that be? How complicated things must be. I think you are stalling for time now. If you have any clues, announce them as soon as possible without letting everyone help you take a look. Because didn't you also say that you don't know who did it? I think you obviously mean what you said, so don't continue to talk about it here. Shen Long couldn't stand these vain things. When he saw that all of them were pretending to do this, he felt very angry and didn't want to get involved at all. Since no one was willing to do it, the one who took the initiative, the person who came out to get stabbed, why not explain all this for him? and he can be the pusher to make the process of this matter faster. There was a trace of hesitation on the face of the barefoot immortal, as if he was thinking about whether to do this or not. He said it directly, but seeing that Shen Long's attitude was really firm, he pretended to be so. He thought for a moment and then told the details. In fact, it's nothing. It's just that in every place where a crime occurs, or not so much, in every place where an accident occurs, everyone there is wearing a jade pendant of Pixiu. Zhu Xian's mentality has been completely understood at this time. Who else can do this? That is, the Pixiu who doesn't care about heaven and earth. He just wants to mess up the heaven and the earth. Baizi's heart is pounding at this time. For a moment, although he did not work with Pixiu to do these bad things, the two of them had some interactions or festivals before, which always made him feel uneasy. He looked at Shen Long with a very complicated expression. Originally, I wanted to use this insider to give me some support, comfort or strength, but seeing that Shen Long seemed to be full of sorrow and thinking, he suddenly sighed. It seems that this matter is really unsolvable. Did you say that the jade pendant of Pixiu you saw was implying something? Let's not discuss this matter for now, but I feel that now is the time to talk about such a serious matter at a banquet, which seems a bit irrespective of the occasion. We will have a meeting to discuss human affairs together later, okay? The barefoot immortal originally wanted to remind everyone. He didn't expect that this matter would be solved today, so he agreed happily at that time. He just turned over the story and pretended to be himself. He was so drunk that he sat far away to drink. Fuxi presided over the banquet and was able to keep it running normally. The banquet had already started for a long time. After the advice given by the barefoot immortal just now, at this time, everyone became more and more aware that this Pixiu had been really outrageous recently. They didn't expect that he would go to the human world to cause trouble. But Shen Long knew very well in his heart that at some points in time, it might not be right at all. Is this thing right? Before anyone knew what Pixiu had done, everyone had already paid all their attention and the evidence of the crime seemed to have been found. Usually, Pichu was directly convicted. Isn't this unfair? Although he thought so in his heart, but he didn't say it directly, because he must have said very little at this moment. If he said it, what would happen if everyone suspected him? Chapter 552. He doesn't have the mind to deal with other things now. He just wants to do other things. There is no way to distract him. It's better not to take a trip into this muddy water. After all, Baizi's current situation is that he cannot protect himself, and no one can say who will support him. The current situation may be the most chaotic time here, so it is better for him not to act trashly. As for Baizi, he didn't choose to join the team at first, nor did he support anyone. He just remained neutral and chose to wait and see what happened there. This big thing had nothing to do with him. It's all Baizi's fault. It's better not to involve him. While drinking, Shen Long observed everyone's expressions, silently recording everyone's thoughts at this time and guessing their inner thoughts. After observing for a long time, he could often tell through these things. Although they are all gods, everyone can disguise the expression on their face. As long as they change it regularly, they can turn into a completely different face. But as long as it is a spell, there will definitely be loopholes and flaws. How can it be completely meticulous? It was because Shen Long knew so much about these spells that he observed them so carefully and noticed their strangeness immediately. After the barefoot immortal said those words, he returned to his seat still, and then drank wine seriously. It seemed that his movements were smooth. In fact, if you look closely, you can see that his fingers have not moved for a long time, and his expression was also so stiff. Shen Long had already discovered the clue at this time, and naturally he would keep staring at him, because he had already guessed a more interesting idea in his mind, but he still needed to confirm it. He originally thought that the barefoot immortal used the clone technique to leave a shell of himself here, and his real body had gone elsewhere, but he didn't expect that the person opposite him would blink at him the next second. What a coincidence! The barefoot immortal did use this spell just now, and then came back again. Shen Long found out a little late, so it couldn't be true. Shen Long was a little annoyed, but he firmly believed that he was not wrong just now. He must have used this clone technique to do something during this period. The great healer had noticed Shen Long's gaze and felt that he was about to be discovered. He felt a little guilty and quickly told Fuxi that he had something important to do and wanted to leave the banquet. Shen Long finally had an idea at this time. He used the clone technique to leave his body at the banquet, while his real body quietly followed the barefoot immortal. In the end, it was discovered that he had not gone far, but came to the back garden of the banquet and met an unfamiliar guard in a pavilion. This guard didn't look like an ordinary person, because ordinary people couldn't enter this place at all. His behavior of quietly trying to avoid everyone actually aroused everyone's suspicion. Therefore, he planned to leave the banquet directly, and since he chose to meet this society in such a place where it was very easy to be discovered, it meant that there must be some shady deal between the two of them. But right now, there is no evidence and nothing can be said, so he still needs to eavesdrop further for details. Chapter 553. Shen Long hid himself, watching from a distance what the barefoot immortal and the guard were talking about. Shen Long wanted to get closer, but he couldn't get too close. If he got too close, he would be easily discovered. He took a few steps closer to the barefoot immortal and the guard, and then he could vaguely hear their conversation. Shen Daxian changed his drunken demeanor before and became extremely serious. He looked at the guard in front of him and said nervously, "Shen Long, it seems that you have begun to doubt me. Why weren't you so careless?" Wei asked seriously to the barefoot immortal. "It's not that I'm not careful, it's that Shen Long is different from other gods. I vaguely feel that he can see through all our spells." Yes, Shen Long is indeed different from other gods. Wei confirmed what the barefoot immortal said. "Then what should I do? Did Buddha do anything?" the barefoot immortal asked. After hearing what the barefoot immortal said, the guard suddenly raised his head and looked around. Then Shen Long began to hear their conversation clearly again. He could only concentrate his divine power on his ears. After a while, Shen Long began to hear the intermittent voices of the guards. "Buddha is conserving strength. Buddha, catch them all." In one fell swoop, he only heard some keywords, but these keywords were enough to shock Shen Long. Buddha planned to catch them all, and Shen Long planned to wait for the barefoot immortal to leave, knock the guard unconscious, and then take him away. The guard was talking to the barefoot immortal. After saying these words, he started asking about the banquet. Fuxi made things difficult for Buddha at the banquet. It seems that Fuxi is becoming more and more arrogant. When Buddha kills them all, will he still be arrogant? Recently, some strange things have appeared in the mortal world. Countless women in the mortal world suddenly disappeared on their way to get married. There was also a sudden surge in the river water. The water level dropped again overnight, and then surged tens of meters again, flooding the river. Countless farmlands and homes have been destroyed, and the government offices in the world that were originally built in an orderly manner suddenly turned into ashes. Well, do you know who did it? I don't know who it is for the moment, but in every place where a crime occurs, or not so much, in every place where an accident occurs, the people there are wearing Pixiu's jade pendant. Then this is the truth. He must be the one who doesn't care about the sky or the earth, and just wants to make chaos in the sky and the earth. Well, those Zuxian people think so too, but I'm leaving first. I can't stay here for too long, for fear of being discovered, especially that Shen Long. Okay, then let's go. Dai nodded and replied. The barefoot immortal got up and left after getting the consent of Yi. However, the Yi did not leave immediately and continued to stand there, obviously waiting for someone. Shen Long saw the figure of the barefoot immortal became farther and farther away, and when only a black dot remained, he stood up and walked slowly towards the guard. The guard was obviously not an ordinary person. Shen Long saw his ears move, then he opened his mouth. Which god is eavesdropping here? Show up quickly. As long as you show up and confess your crime, I can spare your life. But after his words, there was suddenly no movement. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.